Key to parenting, our relationship with our children. It's funny, when I recorded the first video on parenting, I wanted to include this part, but for some reason I forgot. But it really is the key to parenting. So in this video, I'm going to talk about, why it's important, how our relationship with our children, having a good relationship, is actually going to help us. It's going to make parenting easier, right? And I'm also going to talk about all the different ways that this shows up. So as you might imagine, all relationships in our lives are important. Right? Our relationships with our family, our friends, our coworkers. Really, in many ways, is what makes life worth living. If we have good relationships with people, chances are we're going to live a happier, more fulfilling life, right? It feels good when someone supports us, and it feels equally as good when we can support or help someone else. And we do that through solid relationships, not perfect ones. I want to be clear about that. It's not about perfect relationships. I don't know if there's such a thing, but the whole basis of our society is based on relationships. If you look at businesses, all our medical industries, everything is based around relationships. One of the keys to business is creating good relationships. And all the different structures, right? We have a relationship with ourselves, with our bodies, with our minds, with our nervous systems, maybe with spirit. And then from there, it goes out into the family unit, right? Those are all different relationships. And then those relationships grow out into groups in the community, different groups of friends. And then it expands even into cultures, certain geographical areas as well. So the more we can have healthy relationships, right, that support us with our partners, our family members, our coworkers, our employers, and our employees, it's going to leave us having a more fulfilling life. We're going to have the support to help in our challenging times, right? For a lot of people, it's tough to accept support. It's certainly been a big part of my journey. And we're just going to have an easier life because we're going to have less conflict, or we're going to be able to repair conflict, which I think is the real key. So when upset does happen, we're able to come back into a more happy equilibrium in the relationship. So what are some of the reasons that a healthy relationship with the other parents in a child life are important? Okay, so this could be your spouse, it could be a co-parent, a step-parent, even some of our family members that are helping maybe raise our kids, taking care of them when we're busy working or what's happening in our lives. So obviously the first thing is it's going to have more support for our child, right? We don't ideally, we're not supporting our child alone. It's good to have different types of support, different influences, different perspectives. They learn how to be in different types of relationships with different people. Right? The next thing is modeling how to be in a relationship. How do we treat other people? How do we navigate conflict? Right? Conflict or disagreeing is actually very normal and healthy, as long as we know how to navigate that. And our children, we're always modeling to our children. They're going to learn how that happens by watching us, by us doing that with them even, right? We're also going to have a lot of examples or modeling of how to interact with the opposite sex or the same sex, because often those types of relationships are different. How to be in romantic relationships, whether it's same sex or opposite sex. How to treat our partners. And one important part here to this is that they don't get caught up in the middle of conflicts, right? It's normal for parents, co-parents, everyone to have conflict, right? It's not the conflict that's the problem, but when they get put in the middle, when parents are looking for them to take sides, or when they say really mean things about the other parent, and the children are going to take that on. They're trying to keep the relationship with both parents, maybe one more than the other sometimes, but they're going to, again, sacrifice parts of themselves to maintain that relationship. It's part of their survival mechanism or strategy, right? So we don't want our children to have to pick and choose sides. They're going to have their preferences. My son has his preferences for even different aspects of his life. Sometimes he'd rather be with mom, sometimes he'd rather be with dad, depending on what's happening and circumstances. So what is a healthy relationship with our children? What does it actually look like? So these are ideas that I certainly have, that I practice with my son, with other children too when they're around, right? I don't have a lot of time with other children necessarily, but I try to practice these things with other children. We're all in different communities, can all support different children in small ways, right, when they're in our lives. So the first thing I believe, and a lot of the science will say this as well about secure attachment and creating the right environments for our kids, is for them to feel safe to be themselves. So I mean, safe physically, emotionally, and mentally, so that they're not feeling attacked all the time, like they have to defend themselves. But even more than that, just to be themselves. If they're silly, they can be silly without being criticized. If they're sad, they can be sad without being told to smarten up, or safety to be themselves and express in themselves. And ideally, in a healthy relationship with our children, you get to be you as well, right? You might not show all the really rough edges you have to your children. You might protect them from some of them, but you get to be yourself too. One of the greatest gifts that we give our children is who we are. Whether we're fun or we're smart and caring, considerate, boisterous, whatever it is. I really believe that our children have chosen us to be their parents, to have us guide them and protect them through their lives. So why wouldn't we be us? Another part of a healthy relationship with a child, it might look like this, is try to minimize the traumatic experiences they have, right? We can't protect them from everything. Accidents happen. Could be a car accident. They could fall down and break their leg, whatever it is. They might witness something really traumatic to see. But we want to minimize that as much as possible without a lot of restrictions, without always being belittled, pushed down, those sorts of things. Because over time, that can be traumatic for a child. They look to you for safety and as being a compass, right? If they feel safe with you, they're going to use you as safety for them to start to figure out how to navigate the world. But first, they're going to use you as a compass. They'll trust you to navigate the world for them. So how do we allow them to feel safe to start to explore the world, right? This is how they learn how to navigate the world. They explore it. They have different experiences. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. They learn, they feel, they start to manage their own emotions, right? So they can get sad, but not hold on to that, carry that sadness. It can pass. And if we allow these things, then they will pass. So ways to create safety for them to explore life are to make mistakes. That's how we learn. That's a big way of how we learn. To ask questions, right? If they can never ask questions, they don't feel safe to do that. That's going to be stifling for them. Right? We really want to create a space for them to come back to regroup and make sense of their experiences. And so they're going to go out and have experiences, good or bad. They might get upset. Their nervous systems are all out of whack. They need a place to come back to, settle down, kind of ground, calm their nervous systems, right? When our nervous systems are highly activated, we can't think clearly. We can't make sense of what's happening. They need that person or space to come back to emotionally regulate themselves and allow their nervous systems to return back to an equilibrium. Of course, we want to create safety for them physically, emotionally, psychologically, and mentally. Another way we can create this safety for them, this place for them to be themselves and learn how to explore the world, is to be understanding and compassionate. Right? Some days the world is going to be too much. It's the same for us as adults. Sometimes the world is just too much. And in many ways, our culture, our society, the way that we were brought up tells us that that's the way it is, and we just have to keep going. Suck it up, push it down. But that's just adding more and more to the child's nervous system. If we can be understanding and compassionate, it doesn't mean we have to let them walk all over us. Doesn't mean we don't have rules and boundaries. If we can lead with understanding and compassion, and then once they're calm and their nervous systems are regulated, then they can start to use their logical brains. Kids up until age about 10 are more or less physical and emotional. They don't have a lot of the logical circuits in their brains firing yet. So if we can start to bring that understanding and compassion to them, then they can learn what they need to learn at the stage that they're in their life. And part of that, once their nervous system is calm and they're starting to reason, then we can let our children know how they may have impacted us. Maybe they yelled at us. That happens with my son sometimes. He yells at me. And when he's yelling and then often crying right away, right? Anger is often protecting the sad part underneath, but he often has that pattern. He's not going to be able to reason logically. He's not going to be able to make sense of anything. So I wait till he calms down, right? He maybe cries and then rests a bit. And then his logical brain starts to come back online. And then I can go to him and say, hey, I know you're upset and I'm sorry. And I try to understand. And then I say, hey, when you said those mean things while you were angry, those were hurtful things. So then we get to model relationship. It's okay to let them know the impact they've had on us. And of course, this is age appropriate. A 3 or 4-year-old probably isn't going to understand that all that well. They still, in many ways, are still individuating. So they kind of get muddled up. Some might, but as they get older, it'll become more and more available to them. Another way we can add safety is to have some structure, some consistency in their lives. And that can be through things like rituals, bedtime, reading before bedtime, dinner at the table, Saturday morning cartoons, or going for a walk in the park every Tuesday and Wednesday night, or whatever it is. Things for them to look forward to, but it also creates a bit of structure in their day, in their weeks, in their months. Another way is through joy, laughter, and warmth, right? Just moments, those little moments. Often those are shared for me and my son at bedtime. We read a story and then we goof around. He gets tickled by my beard or whatever it is. I'm being silly. And that's something we don't want to regiment too much. We don't want to create too much structure around that. We want that to be more in the moment. Open communication is going to create that safety. Right? Then they're going to know that they can come to you with what's going on for them because you're not going to shut them down. You're not going to try to tell them that they're not having their experience. I think we do that often with our kids. Oh, you're not really that upset. Oh, that's not really how it was. The truth is our experiences are our experiences. Everyone else has their own perspective. So what we experienced in that moment wasn't the same thing that anyone else experienced. So who are we to say what they experienced? But if we can be open and ask questions and try to understand their perspective, that's going to help them make sense of it. But also they're going to trust, Dad's not just telling me what I should be, what I'm thinking. It's important that I figure these things out myself. I'm smart. I can do this, right? It builds confidence. Another one is space, right? Our lives these days often can get more and more full of activities, things to do, everything. But we all need space and time to ourselves, family time, even time for the parents together. Sometimes we need space to figure things out. One thing I've done with my son is when we go in the car, I don't give him devices because I believe that boredom is often when the subconscious mind is sort of creating structure and bringing understanding. We're just daydreaming. We're looking out the window. We don't think anything's happening, but I believe that a lot is happening in that time. So it's good when we don't have stimulus every second of the day. Then there's the emotional expression. Is that welcome? Can they get excited without us telling them to be quiet right away? Can they get angry? Can they be sad? Can they be confused? Can they get impatient? We do that, though, all those things as adults. But when our children do it, we often try to stop them. And that often comes from a place of we were told that those things aren't acceptable. So we've got this behavior in us that wants to stop it in other people as well as ourselves. So, what does a healthy relationship provide us and our children? Right? The first thing is a sense of personal fulfillment. When that relationship is going well, we're going to feel good about ourselves. And we're going to feel connected to our children, probably connected to our own self as well. You know, when we have a good relationship with our children, we can access the innate wisdom that we all have. Most of us as parents know what is best for our kids, right? We're attuned to them, we know them, right? Doesn't mean we should assume we always know best, but we often have this natural parent instinct. But when the relationship with our children isn't good, I think we doubt that. We don't have access to it in the same way because our nervous system is not regulated, right? We're triggered. So there isn't that natural parental wisdom that can come forward. As I've said before, another thing that a healthy relationship with our children is going to provide them and maybe even us is a place to learn and explore who they are. As adults, we don't stop learning who we are. Sometimes I think we assume we've figured it out. We've gotten to this place and like, this is us. But that's not my experience. I'm not the person I was 6 months ago. I'm not completely different. But our children are going through this at an even, much higher accelerated rate from us. A healthy relationship provides a compass point for our children, right? What they've discovered is that for a child to find their own independence, their own ability to navigate the world, to find their own kind of internal compass, they first have to rely on someone else's compass. So independence first is dependence on a safe other person and a parent often. So we provide them that safety and then they trust us to guide them, right? They put their dependence on us in a very natural way, not in like a survival type way, but like, I really trust mom or I really trust dad. They know how to get me through the world. And then as they grow from that place, that's going to give them the confidence and the ability to know how to navigate the world more and more, right? They're still going to need us. They need us a lot longer than most of us think. Our teenagers need us. It's just different. But from that core compass point, they can start to find their own way. They can start to navigate for themselves. A healthy relationship, and this might be the number one thing, but it's going to affect our ability to repair. Okay, so upset, disrupt, conflict, that's normal in a relationship. when we have trust, and this is the same with adults, but it's especially important for children, when we trust that that person, even though we might be upset with them, even though that we might not be thinking the same way, we might be disagreeing, we might be angry with them, whatever, we might be sad because something happened with them, but we know that there's enough safety in that relationship that we're going to come back together and we're going to figure it out. And children need that for their own nervous system. Children tend to really go off of our biorhythms. And so if a child's really kind of upset about something, they'll often come. My son used to sit in my lap and we just sit there together, and eventually our breath would become in sync and he would just start to calm down. He's using my calm nervous system to calm his down. But it can also create that trust, that rhythm in upset. I see it with my son in many ways. And as he gets older, that dynamic, that balance shifts. And before, when he was upset, even if he was upset with me, he'd want a hug right away. But now, as he gets older, he wants a bit of space. He'll go to his room and he'll be upset with me for a while. He'll be mad at me. And then I'll give him some time. And then I'll go in and say, hey, are you still mad at me? And often he'll say yes. And then I'll ask him, do you want me to stay here or would you like me to go again? And I'll respect his wishes. Right? We're finding as he gets older a new dynamic. But he knows when he's ready, he can come back to me and we'll come back together. I'm not going anywhere. And then we repair, and that actually makes our relationship better. It builds trust. It builds his ability to navigate big emotions and then come back to a calm, peaceful place inside and make some sense of things. We might talk about what happened and talk about how it impacted me, how we might do things differently. Another really important part to the health of our relationship with our children, and no matter what, we can always repair it. We can always, if our relationship with our children isn't very good right now, that can change, right? We can always change it. It's easier if we maintain the relationship in a good place, just like anything, like a car, or, if we keep it in general good health, same as our bodies, and it's going to be easier to keep that way. But as our children get older, into their teens, a big part of their development is to separate from us, to start navigating more and more of the world and life for themselves, starting to trust their own instincts and their own ways of thinking. But they don't need us any less. They just need us in a different way. And often, and this is a big part of Gordon Neufeld's work, Hold On to Your Kids, his book, which I recommend. It's one of the best parenting books out there. But he talks about the peer relationships. So when kids are starting to individuate or become more independent, often in their teens or preteens even, they are looking for different kinds of support. And if they don't have that safety, that good relationship with their parents, they're going to start going to their peers. But their peers are all going through a very similar experience, right? They're not balanced in their emotional systems. They're not thinking straight, right? And there isn't that unconditional love and care that a parent can have. You might find that very rarely in a parent or in a friend, but it's a lot more consistent in a parent. So if we maintain that relationship with our children as they go into their teens, they're not going to listen to us, but we're still going to have more influence on them. So they might not do exactly as they're told, like they did when they were young, but they're going to listen to us a lot more because they're still going to be trusting that relationship, right? So they might still do things that we don't want them to do and upset us. But if we don't have that relationship, we don't even have the influence in many cases. And the harder we come down on them, that can often make the relationship even more and more strained and push them away. And we do these things from love, but that isn't how it's received. So that's a really important one as our kids get older. And then the last thing that a healthy relationship with our children gives us is actually an opportunity for us to learn ourselves. My son, he's not 10 yet, and I have learned so many life lessons from him because I'm open to hearing what he has to say. I want to hear what his thoughts are. And he has perspectives that I couldn't imagine coming to on my own. So I gain a lot. I gain a lot through him. So I'm going to do a quick recap before I finish the video. So the key to parenting, our relationship with our children. So all relationships, they're kind of the basis of our societies, the structures of all parts of our lives, kind of our family, then our extended family, out into groups, communities, cultures, different geographical groups. And when we can have healthy relationships with the people in our lives are more fulfilling, right? We have more support. They're easier because there's less conflict, or we're able to navigate or resolve conflict more easily. When we have good relationships with the other parents or key people in our children's lives, that's going to support them, right? There's more support for them, more emotional and mental capacity to support them. They get to see how relationship is done in a good way, right? We're always modeling for them. So they see how to treat other people. And they see that conflict can be resolved and that disagreeing isn't necessarily a bad thing. They get examples of how to interact in romantic relationships or relationships with the opposite sex or the same sex. We don't want to ever, I shouldn't say we don't want to ever, but ideally, we don't want our children to get caught up in the middle of our conflicts with the other parents or the other adults in their lives, right? We don't want them to have to keep secrets or pick and choose sides, that sort of thing. That's going to put a lot of psychological stress on them. So what does a healthy relationship with our children look like? Right? They're going to feel safe to be themselves. You're going to have a chance to be you, and they're going to benefit from that. We're going to want to protect them from traumatic experiences as best we can. Right? We want to create a safe place for them to explore their lives through making mistakes, asking questions, having a place to always come back to and regroup and make sense of their experiences, and a place for them to emotionally regulate their nervous system. So calm down emotionally and get back into a healthy flow. We want to create safety for them, so physically, emotionally, psychologically, and mentally. We want to bring as much understanding and compassion for them, right? Sometimes the world is just too much. They don't want people necessarily to fix what's wrong. They just want someone to be with them when things are going wrong. And once the emotions calm down, we can let our children know how they impact us, right? That's modeling relationship. It's important that other people know what they do has an impact on us. Not to guilt them or shame them, but just to let them know. Right? We want to create some consistency or structure in their lives. It's going to help their brains and their nervous systems. We want to have as much spontaneous connection, joy, laughter, and warmth as we can, right? Hopefully naturally. We want to have open communication. We want to have space, right? Space for personal time, space to figure things out. And we want to have free emotional expression as much as possible, right? And that's going to depend on the family and the culture. So what does a healthy relationship provide us and our children? There's a sense of personal fulfillment, the environment for our natural parental wisdom, our innate abilities as parents to come forward, place to learn and explore who they are and us as well, provides them a compass point, so a place to come back to and kind of reorient themselves to the world and what's going on for them, right? They need to rely on someone first. They must be dependent on someone first before they find their own independence. A healthy, good relationship is going to make repair possible and more easy, right? So conflict and disruption is natural, but that healthy relationship builds the trust to be able to resolve it, right? As our children gets older, that healthy, good relationship with our kids is going to maintain our influence in their lives, right? Not control, but influence. They're going to actually still want to know what we think. So they're going to value our opinion, right? A healthy relationship is modeling for them what a healthy relationship will be for them in their other relationships in the present and the future. And it's also an opportunity for us to learn from our children. We can create that safe relationship for them. This is a long video. There's a lot in there. I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, or even experiences of creating this with your children. We don't always celebrate all the good things that we are doing. We often focus on where we've missed the mark, but it's equally important to celebrate and acknowledge all the wonderful things that we are doing.